Harlen Wheatley. I'm the master distiller here at Buffalo Trace. And we're going to do a live tasting today of some of our bourbons and walk through a little bit of the history. And we're also going to do some questions and answers from some of the questions that were submitted online. So we're going to get started. And the first one we're going to talk about is Buffalo Trace. That's our flagship bourbon. We came out with that brand in 1999. The reason we came out with that brand is we wanted to talk about the distillery and look at the heritage and the legacy of how the distillery got started. And in 1773, we've been doing this a while. So in 1773, we settled here as a settlement and created the first distillery. And the reason we settled here is because the buffalo crossed the Kentucky River and created a trail or a trace, and the distillery grew from there. Started off small, grew from there, and we really haven't changed since the beginning. If you look at a lot of the old maps and all the history of the distillery, and we're lucky enough to be on the National Historic Register, and we're a real working National Historic site, and we are lucky enough to have all that history. And we talked to the people with that organization, and we explained to them the changes that we are making currently with our expansion and our growth. We really haven't changed. 1773, we built a little house on the river, and we built some distillery buildings around it, and continued to grow and make whiskey. We like to think as we continue to get better and more experience that we're making really good whiskey, and we're continuing to focus on the quality of the whiskey. But with Buffalo Trace, it's our flagship. It's the one we're most proud of. It's the one that represents the distillery. It's the best all-around bourbon that we have. It's a rye bourbon, 90 proof, authentic, real, something you can be proud of. And put it on the shelf, and it's extremely versatile. You can use it straight, on the rocks, cocktails, or whatever. So, if you have some at home, I recommend pouring yourself some, and we can walk through a tasting. Generally with the bourbons, we use these type of glasses, and there's a lot of different options out there. But you do want to use kind of a fluted glass. Gives you the best aromatics. You can use whatever glass you have, but you don't want to use plastic if you can avoid it, because it would interfere with the true taste and aromas of the bourbon. So with this, we poured it straight out of the bottle, 90 proof, and it's going to be some astringency from the alcohol. So what I like to do is you don't roll it like a wine, but you just bring it up gently to your nose, and give it a full breath, but not a deep breath. You're just trying to get that aroma from the bourbon. Do it a couple different times, and really what you're looking for is that nice balance of age to distillate. We use a rye bourbon, for Buffalo Trace. It has corn, rye, and malted barley. And what we're after there is you want to pick up those tannins, those caramels from the wood as it ages. We also kind of select best locations in the warehouse because, again, this is our flagship bourbon. We put all of our bourbons away based on anticipated use. So for 8 years it sits in that warehouse. We know that we really don't want to put those on the lowest floors. We don't want to put them on the top floors. So generally it's in the middle of the warehouses. We have 25 different warehouses on site now and growing daily. But we pick these locations based on the best overall flavor for Buffalo Trace. So then when you taste, after you nose that, just get a little bit on your tongue. And really, for bourbon anyway, it's kind of a three-part tasting, for at least what I think. Three-part tasting, you have the beginning, middle, and end for bourbons. Bourbons are generally sweet and have a really nice long finish if you like the flavor. But with Buffalo Trace, it's again well balanced. You can pick up that rye, that spiciness of the rye, and again, authentic, full flavor, bourbon, well balanced.
We have a couple questions coming in already, Harlan. For Buffalo Trace, Gavin Dremy from Instagram. What do you believe sets the Buffalo Trace brand apart from others?
Really for us, it's the main thing is really the authenticity of the bourbon. Made from a distillery that's been around for so long with so much experience. What sets us apart is the people and the techniques that we use. It's really every facet of the production process. We try to do things at keeping the taste in mind, whether it be the cooking or the fermentation. We also have our own yeast that we use, and we've been using since Prohibition. And then distillation, of course, we have the biggest distillation equipment in the business, and we've been, with all the experience we've had to make the different whiskeys. We double distill all of our whiskey. We've got a certain amount of reflux that we use to give it that flavor. And then the aging, of course, we age our wood. We have a minimum age on our wood. We have very tight specifications on our bourbon barrels. And then we age them in our warehouses. So all of our warehouses are unique. We're able to create different varieties of flavors. So it's really every facet of the production process, the authenticity from Buffalo Trace, and the other side of it is also things like price. We believe in charging fair prices for bourbons, and we want every person to have some be able to afford our bourbons and taste them. So it's really every part of it. That's a long answer.
That's good.
All right. Move on to Sazerac Rye. For us with Sazerac Rye, long history for us. From New Orleans, we had the Sazerac Coffee House. That's how our brands got started through Sazerac. And for Sazerac Rye, it's something special for us because we have a little bit of all the varieties of rye. So if a person likes rye whiskey and not a bourbon, it's a rye whiskey. In order to be a rye whiskey, it has to have the majority of the grain be rye. And that's the main difference between that and bourbon. But if you really like rye whiskey, we started out with an 18-year-old antique Sazerac rye whiskey, and it was really good. We had a lot of demand for that. We had bartenders all across the country write us and talk to us about, we love your rye, but we hate to make cocktails out of your 18-year-old rye whiskey. So then we started this 6-year-old Sazerac, and we really wanted to honor the tradition of the original bottle from the 1800s. We did the design based on that. It's a 6-year-old rye, so 90 proof, full-bodied, good, perfect for things that bartenders are using it for in cocktails or drinking it straight. And then if you like the rye whiskey flavor and recipe, then we also have Thomas Handy. So if you write down everything you like about rye whiskey, it's all in Thomas Handy because it's barrel strength, uncut and unfiltered. And then of course we have things in the middle like the Pappy 13 and all the other different ryes that we have. So for us, the Sazerac Rye is a perfect cocktail rye. It's doing well, growing well. Same way to taste if you want to nose that first. And really, if you have any left of the Buffalo Trace, a good way to do that is to nose them both at the same time. Just gently, absorb that between the two, and it really shows the difference between the rye whiskey and the rye bourbons. And what you're getting is, since it's the majority of the grain is rye, you're getting a more narrow taste profile. It's spicier. Some people say spicier, shorter finish. It doesn't have that 3-part as long of a finish as a bourbon, but it's perfect for a really good cocktail, and that's what it's designed to do. So I think again, you know, if you taste that, it's a good balance. You know, we try to make sure all of our whiskeys are well balanced, but with this one, it has enough age to you know, give it that tanning, those great tannins and caramels and things, and wood sugars from the barrels. Good balance, and you can put that in, you know, any cocktail. It's very versatile. A lot of people drink it straight, just like Buffalo Trace. All right, so with the next one on the list is our Colonel E.H. Taylor. And for us, you know, this was a special project for us because I guess it's been, you know, it's probably been 11, 12 years ago, we were able to close the loop back on E.H. Taylor. For us, E.H. Taylor was our first real master distiller on the site. He was the guy that put a lot of money into the distillery. He grew the distillery. He put a lot of innovation in the distillery. And we kept that innovation in mind when we re-obtained this brand and renovated the brand to what you see today. And we have a lot of different offerings. So this is the small batch E.H. Taylor. But one of the things we did, because of that innovation of all the things that he did for this distillery, we also created a lot of offerings through the label that were one-time events based on the innovation. We're trying a lot of different experiments. And the experimental program, we'll talk a little bit about that, but we have a pretty sizable experimental program where we have thousands of barrels in inventory, lots of different experiments. And you know, if the taste profile is right, it makes the most sense. We have enough to, you know, put it out. Some of our experiments are 1 barrel, some of them are hundreds of barrels. And you know, if it's a big enough experiment, we'll put them under the E.H. Taylor label and offer them out to people, like the cured oak and the 4-grain and all these different styles. And we're doing that because of the original innovation of E.H. Taylor and honoring that tradition. For us, it's the perfect example of how the experimental program can end up being a full-time label. The perfect example is the 4-grain. It was an experiment. We tried the different grains. We offered it up under the E.H. Taylor. We got a lot of great feedback, and now we're going to reproduce that, of course, every year. We knew that was going to be a good whiskey about 4 or 5 years in, so we started making that year, you know, every year, and we'll have that offering, you know, starting soon with under the E.H. Taylor label. So that was a perfect. We call that a graduated experiment. So that's a perfect example of how that experimental program ends up with a you know, full-time label. But the Taylor, you know, we're really proud of the small batch. Again, one of the things Taylor did amongst the thousands that he offered for the distillery business is he worked a lot to create quality in whiskey. You know, before E.H. Taylor, it was okay to spit tobacco juice in bourbon to make it a little darker. Or if you wanted to put a little burn in it, you could put sulfuric acid in whiskey. And he was the first guy to really raise his hand and say, you know, that's probably not a great idea to put tobacco juice in bourbon. So, you know, he said we need some standards, and all that work that he did really culminated into the Bottled in Bond Act, which is really the overall arching quality standards for bourbon. And one of the things we did with the Taylor label is we offered all these up in the Bottled in Bond, except for a couple of one-offs like the barrel strength. So that's why the stamp's there. And Bottled in Bond really means it's a stamp of quality. It's the basic stamp of quality. And for this, it's 100 proof, which means it has a minimum strength in the bottle. You can't mix seasons. You can't mix distilleries. You know, it really just gives you a kind of a confidence when you go to the shelf and buy a bottle that, you know, it meets certain criteria and it's a minimum standard for bourbons. So it's something that, you know, you can be confident when you buy that in the store. So same deal, it's 100 proof, so we raised that proof up a little bit, and you'll notice that when you nose it. But if you have any left beside you, and hopefully you have some. but you'll see that in the nose, the 100 proof. And then again, taste. And you're just getting more in that bottle. You know, if it's 100 proof, when it comes out of the barrel, it's typically on this, probably 135 proof on average. Comes out, and then, you know, you add water to bring it down to 100 proof. That's the only thing that you can add to bourbon is water. And so we get it down to 100 proof, and then it just leaves more of that flavor in there for people to enjoy.
Harlan, we have several questions coming in for some of your experiments.
Okay.
Some specific to Warehouse X, some just about what you've discovered in some of your processes. But SS Rudolph 1 on Instagram asks, what are some of the biggest things you've learned or discovered from the Warehouse X? Warehouse
X has been, you know, for us, it's part of the experimental program. And again, the experimental program is an overarching process for us to look at all spirits, not just bourbons, but whiskeys and vodkas and tequilas and anything you can think of in the spirits business. But Warehouse X was a special one because we've got a few experiments in the program that are long, very long visioned experiments. Warehouse X is a 20-year, minimum of 20-year experiment where we're looking at the environment and all the ways the environment play a role in the final taste of the product. One of the things we did with Warehouse X is we designed it kind of like a wind tunnel for cars. You know, we designed separate chambers where we can manipulate temperature, airflow, sunlight, and humidity. And we're able to do that artificially, of course, but these barrels are sitting in ricks, similar to the way we rick them in our current warehouses. And we really call the experiment the future of aging. Because for us, we want to learn based on the recipe, and we use Buffalo Trace as our recipe, based on the recipe, how this environment affects the flavor of the bourbon. So far we're 4.5 years in. We've experimented with light, we've experimented with surface temperature, we've experimented with swings and temperatures, and we're looking at all the ways that has. And one of the things we definitely have proven is you can change, even though it's the same barrel, same recipe, same day production. We created, there's 5 chambers, we created 5 different products based on manipulating this environment. So what we did for sure have learned already is the way we currently age our bourbon is the way we want it to be forever. We don't want to change it. So, you know, if you said, let's put a skylight in the warehouses, we're going to say no because we know that will change the flavor of our bourbon. So we're learning about consistency, we're learning about new product development, we're learning about a lot of different things through Warehouse X. And some of the things are theories that we're proving, but some of them are theories that have not been done yet. And, you know, proprietary things that we're going to learn. So it makes us better distillers in the long run. That's a long answer.
No, that's good.
But it's a long program. It's a 20-year experiment.
So we do have a few more questions on that. A quick one is from Bourbon Wanderer on Instagram. About how many experimental whiskeys do you think you currently have in process?
So last count, we had over 30,000 barrels of experiments, and experimental number, it's about 38 different types of experiments, and of those 38 different types, we get a lot of variations. So we try to focus on being authentic with our testing. We don't do, flavored, strawberry bourbons. We're not looking at that type of. We're trying to be within the confines of real whiskey making techniques on how that creates different flavors. And through that, there's thousands of varieties that we can pick from. And one of the things we do is we meet every 6 months as a team. We have about 45 people on the team now, and we meet every 6 months, and we look at different ideas. We prioritize the ideas, and there's literally hundreds of things on the list and continuing to grow, which is good. But it's a lifetime of work. There's no end to it. All right, good questions on experiments. Lot more coming. So the next one is our Stag Junior. And Stag for us has been, just a great label. One of the things that we had a consumer one time talk to our CEO, and he said, I think you ought to try barrel strength uncut and unfiltered as a product. And we said, well, I don't know if that'll ever sell. That was something new, and we don't know about that. And about a year and a half later or so, we decided to launch the Stag Senior, part of the antique collection, George T. Stagg. And really, it's through the history of our antique collection, it's been one of the more popular of our antique collection. Really good, great bourbon. If you write down everything you like about rye bourbon, it's in there. Of the George T. Stagg, 15-year-old product at least. Proof is always the barrel strength. So it's something uncut and unfiltered. So all the flavors there. The problem that we had, it's kind of like the Sazerac 18. The problem we had, there just really wasn't enough of that to offer everybody across the country. We offered once, maybe twice a year, depending on the year. But once a year, we offer that up part of the antique collection. Never enough to support the brand. And then one day we got the idea, in order to support that label, let's try something a little younger, but use the same process. And we call that Stag Junior. And it's been very successful. Real happy with it. 9-year-old is typically about 9 years old, a little bit younger. But what's nice about it is we had enough bourbon that we can offer it a few more times, a few more bottles across the country, and still support that, that label. So this one is 132 proof. So a little bit higher proof. So when you nose that, you're gonna see that right away in the nose. If you compare that to some of the ones we've already tasted, just definitely more astringency from the alcohol, but hopefully clean. We think, I think it's pretty clean. And then again, even at 132 proof, still smooth. Very drinkable. Something you would expect at 132 proof. But again, nice long finish with that. The wood and the tannins are very prevalent from the extra strength that's in the bottle. And, it's really what we're looking for, and again, to support that Stag label.
We've got a question that's a pretty timely question. I think a lot of people would like to know from Bourbon Apprentice on Instagram, can you make Stag Junior more readily available?
Yes, more whiskey. That's a common theme. I've got a lot of places that we go to, and I get that question a lot. And one of the things we're working on continuously is trying to meet the demand of our bourbons. And one of the things that really sets us apart is the amount of investment that we're making to create the more supply of whiskey. So we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Last summer alone, we spent $120 million at Buffalo Trace, and we're doing that in order to make more whiskey. This summer we have another $120 million we're spending. We're increasing the size of our cooker operation, our fermentation. We're adding another still house. We're adding another dry house. We're building warehouses literally as fast as we can build them. And we're building one 58,000 barrel warehouse every 4 months, building them as fast as we can build them. And as we build them, we fill them. So we're making more inventory, or making more whiskey, and it's across the board. It's not just Stag. It's across the board with Buffalo all the way up to the antique collections and Pappies and all the bourbons. So we're making more every year, and we're going to continue to invest. And again, the sizable investments that we're making really sets us apart for the future.
We have quite a few questions on the expansion, and one from BFK Nar on Instagram says, do you ever see the bourbon craze slowing down?
Well, one of the things based on based on our investments that we're making, you know, we don't really call it a craze. We call it, you know, just growth. And, you know, we kind of put our nose to the grindstone, and continue to invest and look at the future of all of our products. And we feel like the future looks bright, and we're going to continue to grow. We have a very specific plan, whether it be in the U.S. Most of our sales are here in the U.S., but you know, long term, we can hopefully sell some of the bourbons globally. And you know, we are in charge of our own destiny as far as we're concerned. And so all the work that we're doing, all the money we're spending, is all in an effort to create that, you know, more whiskey and more sales. All right. So next on the list, you know, it's the world's first single barrel bourbon. You know, Blantons. You know, for us, Blantons has been tried and you know, continuing to be a winner for us. In 1984, Colonel Blanton, or Elmer T. Lee was a key player, and he was the guy that really put, in our opinion, really put premium bourbons on the market, on the map, because one of the things in 1983, there was no such thing as single barrel bourbon. There was no such thing as super premium bourbons. And Elmer got the idea of making a single barrel bourbon based on the history of the distillery, and Colonel Blanton himself, you know, having parties at the distillery, going out and getting a single barrel to bottle for his parties. He would go out and he would tell people, hey, we're going to create this brand called Blantons, and we're going to offer it up. It's really hands-on. We can go out and select one barrel at a time. We can taste these things. The quality is, we can't beat the quality because it's so hands-on. And we're going to handwrite the labels. It's really high-end. We're going to charge $25 a bottle for this. And everybody laughed at him. Everybody in the industry said, there's no way that we're going to sell a bottle of bourbon for $25. Nobody's going to ever pay that. And he had a hard time, you know, convincing people at first, you know, to try Blantons. And of course, the stories continued to go, and he would educate and travel around, talk to people about Blantons. And of course, the rest is kind of history, because now every distillery has a single barrel bourbon, and it's all about super premium bourbons and, you know, taste profiles and being able to hand select, you know, tastes. And for Blantons, it's a great brand for us. It's a rye bourbon. We have different varieties that we're offering across the globe, and we just recently added the gold version for the U.S. And we're just real proud of that. It's, again, first single barrel bourbon on the market. If you want to nose that. The recipe on this is a little bit different than our Buffalo Trace. One of the things we do with our Blantons is we add a little bit extra rye, and we distill it a little bit lower proof. And one of the other things that adds a little bit of the flavor component is the way we age it. So we age it in a metal-clad warehouse, and warehouse age, and that gives it a little bit faster aging along the way. So it just gives it a different profile. You should be able to pick that up in the nose and the taste. Really, really good. You know, a lot of complexity and good bourbons that are out there. But with Blantons, again, you almost a guarantee of quality. You know, based on single barrel.
We do have some. We have a lot of questions coming in. We do have one on.
Whiskey.
Yeah, it's sort of the same with Blantons from Ty H. Kellums on Facebook. Two brands. When will Weller's Single Barrel and Blanton's Gold be hitting the market?
The plan for both of those brands are going to come out this summer. So I don't have an exact date, but look forward this summer.
Great.
All right. So with Eagle Rare is our last but not least, that's for sure, because with Eagle Rare, it's actually our most award-winning bourbon. It wins more awards in general any of our bourbons. We like to think a lot of our bourbons are winning more and more awards and gaining on them, but Eagle Rare still produces. And really what makes Eagle Rare special is, it's a 10-year-old bourbon. It's a rye bourbon. The package is award-winning itself. We renovated that package in 2001, and it's just one that's, when you want to drink one on the rocks, this is a perfect selection because, again, 10 years old, a lot of age, really good flavor, 90 proof rye bourbon. So again, if you have it, compare that to Buffalo Trace, the very first one we tried. The difference there, the main difference, is with Buffalo Trace, same recipe, but this one's an 8 versus a 10 years old. That one you can enjoy neat. Again, you can enjoy them all neat, but specifically on that one, it's enough age there where you can enjoy that neat. Caramels really show through, with the age, and it garners a few awards. So.
We have some Eagle Rare questions for sure. We have several on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, Daddy Crowley 561 asks, where does the Eagle Rare barrel sit in the rick house and why?
One of the things we got to be careful, because if we tell too many people exactly where they're at, they might end up taking some of them. But the Eagle Rare for us is one we got to be careful with because it sits in the warehouse for so long. It's a 10-year-old bourbon, so we know that we don't want to put them on the top floors. We know we don't want to put it on the very bottom floor because age is too slow down there compared to the rest of the bourbons. So it's kind of like Buffalo Trace. We're targeting lower to mid floors, second, third floors, and we know for sure that's kind of the best overall, for the 10-year-old sweet spot.
And on Facebook, Jim Dunbar asks, could you discuss the difference in Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace? Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, so which one I prefer? So I talked a little bit about already. The Buffalo Trace is 8-year-old versus the 10-year-old. Same recipe, both 90 proof. So really, it's all about age and location in the warehouse. But as far as preference goes, it's hard for me to all 6 of these bourbons and whiskeys that we have here. I like each one of them, and they're all if I had 6 children, it's just like the old saying, you can't pick your favorite kid. So they're all good for different reasons. I'd say, if I'm going to drink, it depends on the occasion. So if I'm going to drink one on the rocks, I'd probably pick Buffalo or Eagle Rare. If I'm going to drink a cocktail, I'd probably pick Buffalo Trace because it's a little bit more versatile. But they're all good. I've had Eagle Rare cocktails, so if that's the one that you've got on the shelf, I recommend trying it. Actually, what it'll do is it'll spoil you a little bit because then you don't want to make cocktails out of anything else. So it just depends on which one you're tasting. We try to make all of our whiskeys taste really good. It's kind of we try to keep the process as simple as possible. One of the simple answers is we try to make all the whiskey good quality. So
is that all for the tasting?
That's it.
Well, we have a ton of a lot of really great questions coming in from Instagram and Facebook. And on Instagram, while we're talking about what you have on your home shelf, from Pat Rikers, what's the best way to store your bourbon at home?
So that's a good question because I get that question a lot because with bourbons it's a little bit different than a wine only because of the proof in the bottle. So you're getting a lot of, built-in ability to store and, be able to age it longer, not age it, but store in a bottle. But one thing I do recommend is do not store them, if it's cork product, do not store them on their side. Because, everybody knows that a cork is not a perfect, thing, and it eventually could pick up things. It's still just like wines. It can pick up cork taint, it can leak, and all those different things. So I do recommend storing it straight up. I recommend dark because the light will actually oxidize this bottle and it will change the whiskey. The minute you put the whiskey in the bottle, it starts to change. It's changing very, very slowly, but it will change and it will be sped up if you keep it in light. So dark cabinet, It doesn't necessarily have to be chilled, but I don't recommend hot. So, room temperature, 60 degrees in a cold cabinet in the kitchen is fine, and it'll last you several years, 5, 6 years, no changes, but slowly will change. If the bourbon is good, when it starts off life, if it's good, it will stay good, and it will stay, it'll keep that original flavor, but it does change over time.
That's great. On Facebook, Jeff Gebhardt asks, have you always been passionate about bourbon and whiskey? What sparked that passion?
Especially with this distillery and the things that we do here, what sparked it for me was when I showed up at the distillery. I started out pretty much right out of college. I came to the distillery, walked around with the master distiller at the time, Gary Gayhart, walked around with him, and he showed me the place. And what struck me the most was, at that time, the 220 years worth of history of the distillery, all the buildings and all the people involved, the families. It's really what drew me to the bourbon making process. I appreciated all the hard work that goes into it. It's a labor of love. It's made with natural products. There's nothing, that's artificial about it. So there's just so many things, for me, it kind of matches my personality, and it really drew me to it.
Yeah, again, lots of great questions coming in. On Instagram, W6WYT asks, when not making great bourbon, what do you do for fun on your off time?
Well, I don't have any off time. I'm making more whiskey all the time. That's the first answer. But when I do get a spare minute, I enjoy the outdoors. I enjoy, anything related to water. Boating or fishing is probably my two big passions, and I do enjoy that a lot. I've tried to figure out ways to make whiskey on boats, but it doesn't work too well.
On Facebook, Brian Rager on Facebook asks, how do you divide up your time between maintaining the quality of the established brands versus developing new products?
Developing new products, the majority of that work is around, there's always brand development, but there's always the experimental program is a good example of that. And really, if you talk to everybody in the program, it's really the fun part of the job. I mean, we've got the daily routines and a lot of the things that we do every day that's related to, our legacy brands and all that work, which we enjoy that too. But the experimental program gives you the ability to try new things, the things that haven't been tried before, create new flavors, and that's always exciting. Who knows, good examples, who knows what a 4,000-year-old strain of grain would taste like if you made it with whiskey. And we were able to answer that question through the Grain of the Gods with the Taylor label, with the Amaranth. So that was just a fun project, and we're continuing to develop those. And the balancing act is just natural because we're kind of doing it every day. We talk about it every day. So
looks like people do know you make a vodka as well, Wheatley vodka.
Yeah.
And so Terry Kasler on Facebook asks, do you have any plans on producing a potato vodka?
Well, so one of the things, again, through the experimental program, we look at every different kind of recipe and different kind of raw ingredients there are out there. We've looked at potato vodka. We currently don't have any plans to make that, although we've experimented with some potatoes and learned a lot about them. But we currently don't have any specific plans to make a potato vodka. We're pretty happy with the ingredients. We chose those ingredients for a reason with the vodkas that we have now, because we wanted that, those flavors, those particular flavors. But we've got more to learn, and I never say never. Next thing you know, we're making potato vodkas.
Again, lots of questions from one from Tracy Crooks. I believe this is on Facebook as well. What is your favorite place or building at Buffalo Trace?
Well, I think last count we had about 300 different buildings here at the distillery, and we're building new ones like I said, one every 4 months. So we got a lot of new buildings. You know, the new warehouses are amazing. You know, they're state of the art. You know, we've got a patented heating process, and new wood, and they're nice and straight and easy to roll barrels into. So they're fun to be in. I really enjoyed, probably my favorite place is the fermenter building, because that's kind of where all the ingredients get mixed up into the pot, and you get to smell the aromas and look at the fermentation. That's where all the little yeast cells are working themselves to death and doing all the magic. So for me, that's where the whiskey is made in the fermentation, and then, you know, after that distillation. I like all the buildings, but, you know, fermentation is probably my favorite.
So this timely question too, with everything going on Instagram. Popkin Aaron asked Harlan, if you're stranded on a desert island with one bottle of bourbon, what would it be?
That's a good question. I call it the end of the world bottle. So everybody should have an end of the world bottle, and something I have figured out, especially through this Corona, you know, thing. One of the things I've always said is, you know, some people save beans and some people rice, but you can trade for beans and rice. So as long as you got some good bourbon at the house, you can always, you know, make it through. But, you know, obviously if it's the last 3 bottles, I would pick the high proof. You know, George T. Stag for the rye bourbon recipe, and then you can basically get 2 bottles out of that, out of one. And then I picked the Thomas Handy for the rye whiskey to give us some variety, and then I picked the William LaRue Weller for the wheated bourbon. And all 3 of those are the barrel strength, uncut, unfiltered, and then you got the most you can have, you know, on the island.
Matthew Hudson 00 on Instagram asks, how has COVID-19 affected operations, and do you see it changing the industry going forward?
Well, it has affected us, because one of the things, you know, of course, we're maintaining social distancing, and, you know, it makes it harder to operate. It limits your ability to, you know, to get up close and personal with people. But one of the things it's done, it's really made us aware of our relationships and all the people that we come in contact with. You know, I travel quite a bit and look at the different sections of the industry, and, you know, it's limited that. So it's gives us the, you know, doing this right here, it gives us the ability to use the technology that's available and try to reach out to people. And it'll continue to change the way we operate, I'm sure. And, you know, we're just going to learn just like everybody else.
Somebody asked too, though, doing hand sanitizer, are you guys still making whiskey?
Yeah, you know, for us, the hand sanitizer was something that came to us through evolution. I mean, we paid attention and saw where there were shortages across the country. But we so happen to have the ability to make, you know, high proof spirits. So why not make that and help the country and all the facilities that ran low because of the virus. So we started making the hand sanitizer as soon as we could spool up, and we have over 2 million bottles of hand sanitizers that we've made already, and continue to ship that out across the country to people who need it. And, you know, it seems like that's something that's important for us. It's something that we've done in the past. I mean, through our 240 years of history, you know, we supported the World War II synthetic rubber program to make alcohol for that. You know, we've suffered through floods and all the different things we have over the years, and, you know, we're going to step up on this one too.
And the second part of that question was, are you still making whiskey?
We haven't slowed down on the whiskey. You know, we're able to do both those things simultaneously because of the equipment and the things that we have here, and we have probably more ability than anybody to be able to do that. And the whiskey hasn't slowed down. We're continuing to put the whiskey away, and, you know, make more whiskey for the future.
Well, we do have tons of questions, but we're about to run out of time.
Yeah.
So, there's a few more I can try to get to, or we could shelf it for next time.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is a good one. People are asking. Bernsey0511 on Instagram just asks, when is the single oak project coming out? 3 years ago. The single oak project.
Well, the single oak project's one, again, that's very similar to the Warehouse X program. So that's a 20-year experiment basically, where we looked at the different oaks and the way they created different flavors of our bourbons. We released those samples over a 4-year period. We got all those results back. We identified a winner based on thousands of feedback, thousands of responses, and we identified that winner. We made that a couple of years ago. The problem is it's an 8-year-old bourbon, so we have to wait about 5 more years before that bourbon becomes aged, and we can put it in the bottle and release that out to people. So we got some time between, but that's one we're excited about. Single oak bourbon, created basically by the public.
I think that's all the time we have. Hate that we can't get to all these questions. There's so many good ones, but they're going to keep coming.
I'll be here making whiskey. All right. Thank you all for joining, and be careful.